And most of our guests, including our moderator, will be joining us online. And we are a okay, there, okay. Okay, so our last panel, it's about a very, very recent subject. As we all know, we are facing a pandemic situation in the world, and we need to have more collaborations between countries. So we will discuss the Alliance of Civilizations. And first, I would like to invite on stage our only guest who is physically here with us. His Excellency, Mr. Masood Manan, the Bangladeshi ambassador to Turkey.
Welcome. After 2 minutes, we will open our stage.
Then all our other guests will be connecting.
Can I see
online.
your?
And I would like to now make an online connection to our moderator, His Excellency Mr. Egemen Bağış, the Turkish ambassador to Czechia.
Mr. Dimitris, can you open your camera? Yeah, thank you.
Now our technical department is trying to make the connection.
Ladies and gentlemen, before the panel begins, I'd like to say a few words about this panel. His Excellency Mr. Egemen Bağış, who's also our board member, has put his input in order to make this panel come to realization. So I'd like to thank him very much on behalf of ICP Organization Committee. And shortly they'll be connecting to the panel. I think our technical team is done. So I'll leave the floor to His Excellency Egemen Bağış to get on with the rest of the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ali.
Are we all? I see Minister Moratinos and Commissioner Avramopoulos and our guest in Istanbul. You are the lucky one who enjoys the most beautiful city on earth. I'm joining you from Prague, and Miguel is in New York, and Dimitris is in Athens, I believe.
Exactly.
Thank you all for being a part of the summit. This year, we're doing the 11th annual summit in a hybrid fashion. The world is changing, and we have to adapt to the changes. And I know Miguel has a very important meeting right after this with the Secretary General of the United Nations. But Dimitris was planning to be in Istanbul, but he had to change his plans. I couldn't go because of the pandemic. Have to be here in Prague, which is another city fighting with the coronavirus. However, as we all know, after the concept clash of civilizations became a popular opinion, the idea generated by Professor Huntington, the whole world was quite nervous. And at that time, Turkey and Spain led the way to convince Secretary General Annan to establish an organization within the UN called Alliance of Civilizations, which is now represented by a very distinguished statesman, my good friend Miguel Moratinos, who served for many, many years as foreign minister of Spain, and who was one of the founders of the alliance. And I'm honored to be on the advisory board, helping Miguel in this very important manner. On the other hand, Mr. Avramopoulos has served as not only Commissioner for European Union, but also as a Minister for Defense, Foreign Affairs, Health, and Tourism, in addition to being Mayor of Athens. So he has dealt with a lot of civilizations issue. And we have another guest in Istanbul who's also very experienced on all those issues. And we are going through a different era. I think this last week we were all very closely following the developments as far as His Holiness the Pope visiting Iraq and meeting with Mr. Sistani. That was a very important development in terms of what to expect. European Union is a great peace project where Commissioner Avramopoulos served very successfully, I must admit, in terms of ensuring peace on a continent that has a history of bloodshed. And I always say that the most important accomplishment of EU is no single state has fired another bullet to another single state in its history. But can we turn this continental peace project into a global one? And how can Alliance of Civilizations help? This year, we were all very much concerned about Hagia Sophia being open for prayers again, and that created a lot of tension all around the world. But now we realize it's not that difficult, and people who used to buy tickets to enter can now enter free, and it's open to everyone. So we can discuss all these developments. I would like to give each speaker approximately 5 to 10 minutes max, so we have some time for Q&A, to share their views on those issues. But I have to admit, one of the most important projects that I've ever heard in my life was by Mr. Avramopoulos. When he was Minister of Tourism, he claimed, and I agreed with him, that the Aegean Sea can be a source of profit for both nations if we can turn it into a tourism haven instead of a dogfight of our military planes. And nowadays, two NATO member allies, Turkey and Greece, are not having the best of times in terms of relations. Can we achieve this alliance of the neighbors within the alliance of civilizations as well? That's also one topic that I would like him to address, because I know if he was in charge, we would have greater relations, because I remember the day he was appointed as Minister of Defense, and I had told my colleague, I can feel safer now. I will sleep more comfortably at night, knowing that someone who believes in peace is in charge. But I also have to admit, those two gentlemen, Mr. Avramopoulos and Mr. Moratinos, were the two global leaders who called me the night of the coup attempt in Turkey and asked, how was President Erdogan doing? So I know they are committed to democracy. I know they're committed to peace. And I thank them for accepting my invitation to be on this panel. Unfortunately, our good friend Şevket Aziz couldn't make it, but we have a distinguished guest with us. My thanks also go to him for joining the platform. So, Mr. Moratinos, why don't we start with you?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, my dear friend Egemen. Let me start by thanking the organizer, the Bosphorus Summit, an international cooperation platform of Istanbul, for having thought of me and inviting me to take part of this gathering, the 11th session of the Bosphorus Summit. I'm very proud to share this panel with great friends and great personality like Dimitris Avramopoulos, and with you moderating this exchange of views. So I cannot be much proud that you have identified as one of the themes of your panels, the Alliance of Civilization. I can imagine that you have selected this subject due to the, let's say, need to enforce and to move forward with this idea, with this engagement of the Alliance of Civilization. I fully agree with the general theme of this summit. I mean, living in an age of uncertainty. And I think that's absolutely the same line, the same priorities, the same objective that the United Nations Alliance of Civilization is trying to implement in these days. I think what the audience will be interested to hear from us is how the Alliance of Civilization can fit and what I can qualify the COVID world or the post-COVID world, because we have not get out of this pandemic and we will have consequences of what has happened during the last year that have totally transformed the way to behave and to relate to each other in this complex world. So let me start by very shortly give you a hint of the history of the United Nations Alliance civilization. You, my dear friend Egemen, have already marked the contest when 16 years ago, Secretary General Kofi Annan agreed of the Spanish-Turkish initiative, President Erdogan and President Zapatero, to really make a response to this so pessimistic outlook of a certain politician, certain politolog, as you say, Samuel Huntington, of a class of civilization. We said normally that there is no class of civilization, it is a class of ignorances, there is a class of political interest. And what we in 2005, we already identified was a tendency, both Turkey and Spain, that was trying to put into a collusion course the Western world with the Islamic world. And we were, of course, under the threat and the concern of a terrorist act that happened first in New York and 9/11 with the collapse of the Twin Towers, then in Madrid and London. And we thought together that the best way to react is to react collectively in a common, responsible way. So it's not a question the West against the East. It's not a question between, the Christian Catholic world against the Islamic Muslim world. It is the common goal to fight radicalism and preventing, the society of a big fracture and disruption. So that is, I think, that was the main objective. And we have to say that this kind of UN initiative have a short time living. Maybe some of the people around the structure of UN thought that after Mr. Annan launched the initiative, well, we could have 5, 6, 3, 7 years. Well, we have now already 16 years. And I can tell you that the United Nations Alliance civilization is more than ever integrated within the UN system. And it's not because of the merit of my predecessor or the work that my team is doing, it's because the United Nations Alliance civilization is more needed than ever. I think the COVID-19 crisis has demonstrated that we need this kind of organization that are mobilized, and his main address is the human beings, how we can really make humanity to survive of the different challenges that are, looming above us. I used to say that, of course, we are all fighting climate change and we have to save the planet. But my dear friends, I think we have another main objective in our work is to save humanity. And humanity is the way we want to live together, how we are going to organize the understanding, the respect, the acceptance of the other. And I think that is the main task of the Alliance of Civilization. So why is so needed today, the Alliance? Because we are living in what I qualify a global, complex, uncertain world. And its objective that qualify the world of today have something to say related to the Alliance of Civilization. Of course, we are in a global world. Nobody can deny that. And that's the response that we have alliance of civilization with S in plural. We are not only one single civilization. We are confronting with different ones throughout history. Each of those civilizations has produced some positive element for the progress of humanity. And we have to respect each other. Each of those can contribute to a better world. We are in a complex world. It's not only about health. It's not only about politics. It's not only about economics. It's not only about financial. It's also because we need that human being is the epicenter of the crisis, and how Homo sapiens, as will say the Israeli politolog Yuval Hariri, will survive. How we are going to organize the living together, the convivencia, Spanish word, that can really overcome the differences, the diversity between ourselves. And thirdly, yes, as you say in the main theme, we are living in the age of uncertainty. Yes, we have no certainty. We don't have truth, but we have to prepare ourselves. And I think the Alliance in this program and project have been working quite intensively with this prevention diplomacy. Diplomacy have, of course, intervention in mediation and negotiation and support different post-agreement, but we have also to underline the importance of prevention. And I think the Alliance in education, in youth, in media, in women issues can provide some response to these challenges. So, my dear friend, I think the Alliance of Civilization today comes to the main answer of this global crisis that has put us the COVID. It's a human crisis. It's not an economic and financial or political crisis alone. It's all together. And for that reason, I think the Alliance can really give us some answer. You mentioned very briefly, and I have to stop it because I already have too much talk on my first introductory remark, two main elements that have been in the heart and the main concern of the Alliance of today's reality. The excellent historical visit of His Holiness Pope Francis to Iraq, I think it's a historical visit, not only because he has the courage, the vision, the engagement to address, all religion, faith. They have started before with the fraternity document, with Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, of, the fraternity document, addressing the Islam world. But today, after the visit, we can see how through fraternity and the fraternity message, Pope Francis can mobilize the Muslim, either Sunni, Shia, different sects, different groups, in order that they all can be respected and working together for peace. And you mentioned, the very controversial issue at the moment when the Turkish government decided to have opening for religious practice, Hagia Sophia. I think Turkish government has the legal reason to decide what they consider is good for their country, but we have also the Alliance try to mobilize all confession in order that we respect and we encourage the historical contribution of kind of religion, and in particular in this case with the Orthodox Church. So the Alliance is working hand by hand with all of them in order that we have a respect, understanding, a historical overview of how the different religions and different confessions have contributed to the fantastic achievement of Hagia Sophia. So we are preparing some kind of gathering in order that we can establish some criteria in order that we can move forward in this respect of all of us. So thank you very much, Egemen. And I think most important in this SOS to save sapiens, because what is at stake today is what is going to be the human being. Human being needed to maintain uncertainty because uncertainty gives us freedom to decide, to opt for option. At the same time, we have to have values and principles. And one of these principles today that is more and more adapted and much more defended is fraternity, as Pope Francis has mentioned in his historical visit to Iraq. Thank you very much to give me the floor.
Thank you, Miguel. That was a very thorough analysis, and I thank you. And about your call for certainty, I think it's going to be more and more difficult. The only certain thing in life is, as once said, taxes and debt. We all will continue to pay our taxes and we will eventually die. But we might as well enjoy the time we have, because as the Americans say, if you want to joke with God, make plans. Who would tell you a year ago that you would have to wear a mask to enter a bank? You would say, I'm not a robber. Today, you cannot enter a bank unless you have a mask. So times are changing and we have to adapt with the times. But I agree with you. One thing is for sure, we need more fraternity, we need more cooperation, because the challenges ahead of us require a lot more solidarity. And talking about solidarity, it's not easy being a friend of Turkey and being so popular in Greece. And our next speaker, Mr. Avramopoulos, has achieved that. When he was mayor of Athens, he was the first to send aid to the victims of the earthquake victims in Turkey back when we had the earthquake in 1999. And since then, he has become a very popular person. And every time there were some disputes between Turkey and Greece, the Turkish nation was always looking at how Dimitris can find a solution. He is a true friend of our president and of myself, and he has been a great statesman. And now the microphone is yours, Commissioner Avramopoulos.
Thank you, my dear friend Egemen. And I would like to say again how happy I am to participate in this year's Bosphorus Forum. It's not the first time, as you know, I've been there before, thanks to your initiative. I am also happy that Mr. Moradinos is with us. If I remember well, to my recollection, Mr. Moradinos is at the heart of this initiative of civilizations dialogue from the very first moment. And the topic you have chosen for this meeting today in the framework of Bosphorus Forum is quite topical and timely, because let me start by making a remark. If cultures and civilizations had shown in the past more mutual cultural respect and understanding, things would have evolved differently in the world. So the topic we're discussing today is of great importance. Furthermore, I would say that during these days, we are confronted with new challenges. Somehow, one of the parameters of this dispute between, first of all, our two nations, Yemen, have to do with also some cultural aspects. And I will tell you more later on. Furthermore, our modern societies, we all know that are complex, multicultural, globalized structures, and are often built upon fragile architectures. This helps me to come to our neighborhood. When we talk with someone who are from Spain and with another friend from the other top of the Mediterranean, let me focus on that. Mediterranean area has been a crucible for many influences and cultures. Mm-hmm. It has seen endless movements and migrations of peoples, of political ideas, of ideologies. An area of conflicts and antagonism, but also an area of cultural synthesis. Our neighborhood, this part of the world, has never been at rest. Therefore, not surprisingly, it is not at rest now. There is no point in history where we can say that the Mediterranean has finally settled down. There are various theories that try and explain this phenomenon. One, and you mentioned it before, my dear friend Egemen, is the Huntington approach, which emphasizes a class of civilizations. But this, I like to believe, is being superseded by a theory, our theory, that we discussed today, of the alliance of civilizations. Now, however, a completely new factor has come to upset our calculations. And you said before, the COVID pandemic. It has given us the urgency of, I would say, a war in time of peace. The emphasis now is on international cooperation and information exchange, in scientific cooperation beyond and above borders, in order to avoid another global crisis like this one. I'm talking from Athens, Greece. My country is in an ideal position to help along this proposed alliance of civilizations, or alliances of cultures, as I said before, as it lies at the very nexus of the European Union and regions further east. the Aegean area, the Orthodox Ecumenical Patriarchate, Cyprus, the holy places, all highly important focal points. Greece thus is in itself an open channel of communication among all the elements in this region. International cultural dialogue conferences have been held in Greek cities and islands for some time, now with marked success. Egemen has participated in some of these meetings. Urgent issues such as mass migration and now the pandemic, more than ever before, have rendered such intercultural meetings absolutely necessary. I envisage the creation, and it's part of my contribution to this debate today, the creation of a center for cultural or civilization dialogue, though the exact name can be worked out. It would promote educational, training, and research exchanges, trade and energy cooperation, joint infrastructure projects, for example, infrastructure, health, exchange of expertise on migration issues, regional history studies, security cooperation, multi-level, climate change observation mechanisms. First of all, the Alliance of Civilizations is helping us to promote dialogue and our collective commitment to promoting inter-religious, intercultural, interfaith dialogue. Sometimes this kind of global problems and issues open the door of cooperation. A dialogue that will address the fault lines within and between societies, reflecting the theme, of course, of today's meeting. The second consideration is the alliance is essential to helping us to manage diversity, one of the great challenges and opportunities, I would say, of our times. You know that I have been Commissioner for Migration and Security in Europe, and I have experienced on the ground what we are discussing today. A lot of all these problems that we are confronted with would have been avoided because they were predicted if people and leaderships, we are thinking in the way we discuss and think today. As more and more people are on the move, and you know that right now there are more than 500 million people on the move, either in the area of migration or as refugees. More cultures and intertwining and more societies are becoming diverse, whether we like it or not. That's another story. Multicultural societies are more likely to be the norm now rather than exceptions in the spirit of these thoughts I share with you today. So I plan to address the gathering here today on this issue as well. First of all, this is my last remarks. The Alliance of Civilizations is helping us to promote dialogue and our collective commitment to promoting what I said before, intercultural relations. So, in this spirit, I believe that the topic we're discussing today is of great usefulness. And the outcome of this debate we have today should spread its messages around not only our neighborhood, but of the whole world. Final remarks. You referred before, my dear friend Egemen, and Mr. Madarin did the same thing about Hagia Sophia. Well, I want to be frank with you because this kind of discussions have to be shared in frankness. I was not the happiest man when I heard it. Not as a Greek or as an Orthodox, but I believe that it was totally unnecessary. And I will be a bit critical on that, sort of backtracking. Hagia Sophia is not a church only. It's a symbol of globality. And it is there to remind us exactly what we exchanged as thoughts today, that there is a city in the world where cultures and religions can meet and coexist. I don't talk politics here, but I was very frank with you, and you know that. It could have been avoided. I know that my friend Mr. Erdogan had prevented it from happening twice before. What happened nowadays? Anyway, it's not the issue of our discussion, but to respect cultural symbols is part of the answer we are giving today on how do we perceive intercultural cooperation and the alliance of civilizations. Final remark. When we use the term alliance is not defined by what we want to do, but who is the one opposing our ideas. Alliance is linked to the term enemy. So who is our enemy? We live in a globalized world, and we have to unite our forces and create a solid basis on cooperation. Globality, you know, I avoid using the term globalization anymore because it has happened. Globality is a reality. So all these challenges we are confronted with, whether we talk about security in the area of our common fight against terrorism, you know, that was one of my issues as commissioner, whether we talk about a pandemic. It's not the very first time that this pandemic like this has knocked on our doors. It might happen in the future. Scientists can work together. And coming closer to our neighborhoods, since we all try to find ways of cooperation, what's the problem if scientists from both sides of the Aegean work together, doctors, researchers, to address pandemic? Or as you very correctly said before, to open the doors for our citizens to visit either Greeks, to visit Turkey, or Turks to visit, as it has happened many times in the past. So, yes, the area of tourism, which is directly linked to culture, should be an open area for people to better know and understand each other. We can find ways. And I'm sure if there is strong political will, we can do it. I remind you that in the year 1930, 8 years after a war, a very harsh and disastrous war between Greece and Turkey, two inspired leaders took bold initiatives, and they signed the well-known, for the ones who still remember history, a pact of friendship and cooperation between Greece and Turkey. These two leaders were Kemal Atatürk and Eleftherios Venizelos. Although the memories were still fresh in the minds, in the minds of our citizens. And the year after, 1931, just in front of my office here, Egemen knows where's my office in Athens, 1 million Athenians, among them refugees from Turkey, were applauding İsmet İnönü and Venizelos entering the ancient stadium of Athens. We should try to revive the spirit of that time and open the doors of cooperation and friendship. All the other issues can be discussed, but we have to be very, very careful. What is lurking at the corner is the threat of populism and nationalism. This mix is very dangerous for us, but also for the whole world. Cultures cannot talk to each other if populists and nationalists take the lead. We shouldn't allow them to do it. Thank you very much for your attention. And of course, I'm open to whatever our coordinator, my good friend, would like to ask. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that very eloquent presentation, Dimitris, as always. Of course, sometimes we have to agree on disagreeing, and I think Hagia Sophia is one of those issues. We are fully aware of its cultural, historical, and spiritual significance as one of the most splendid architectural monuments in the world. And it's, as you mentioned, it's a common heritage issue. But the Hagia Sophia was inscribed on UNESCO's World Heritage List in 1985 as a component of the site as historic areas of Istanbul. And this is a legal issue, which, as Miguel said, and also Harvard Law Review has published a very extensive essay, that it's a legal issue, and Turkish courts took a legal decision, which we all have to respect. But you and I have shared a lot on similar issues. We're still hoping that the historical mosques in Athens will be open one day for Muslim tourists to enjoy, hopefully in the post-pandemic world when there will be tourism again, that can be addressed. But there are many other issues that needs a very positive attitude to be dealt with. And one of them is the refugee crisis, which I will come to in the Q&A session. But we have one more speaker, a very distinguished panelist is with us, Ambassador Masood Manan of Bangladesh. He has represented his beautiful country in many capitals, in Rabat, in Berlin, and Tashkent, and now for the last 1 year, he's the ambassador of Bangladesh in Ankara. He has dealt with different cultures and civilizations as well. Let's give a voice to him and hear his views, and then I have some questions for our panelists. I don't hear him, do you?
Hello? Yeah.
Yes, now we
Excellency, it's a great honor and privilege for me to be here at this very thought-provoking new subject of our decade, I will say, or second decade of Alliance of Civilization. I had the opportunity of serving Bangladesh in various capitals, including actually New York, but New York I was not ambassador, I was a minister there. But it happened during the time of the first ever religious summit in the year 2000, when Bangladesh joined the Security Council as a non-permanent member for 2 years, 2000-2001. I was alternate representative to the Security Council. It's a great privilege to see how Turkey and Spain and other countries joined hands within a decade to start, less than a decade actually, during the Secretary General Kofi Annan's time, and Alliance of Civilization started. I came to Istanbul when Honorable President Mr. Erdogan was Prime Minister and Chief Guest at the inauguration of the Istanbul Conference of Alliance of Civilization, the second one after Spain. Then I also went to Qatar and I followed regularly the happenings. In Tashkent, when I was serving, I was also ambassador to Kazakhstan. You know, President Nur Sultan, he also has his own program every 2 years. He used to have when he was president. Also, as Honorable Minister said from Greece, that there are other initiatives all over around the world for cultural diplomacy to prevent peace breaking. And Nur Sultan also, President Nur Sultan also had an inter-religious, interfaith program every 2 years in his capital, now called according to his name, previously Astana, regularly. Beside that, we can find in Morocco, where I also served as ambassador, similar attempts. What I want to point out that human being loves peace. From time to time, maybe in the past, for the situation of that time or for the system of that time, people believed in, war. Through war, they conquered another country, they became rich. When the colonial time came, they put business with war, and now we have capitalism after a small stint of socialism. But the main thing is majority people in the world love peace, and through their leaders, they have various attempts to maintain peace. And it's a great honor to see that Turkey with Spain took a big initiative to bring that very seriously for the younger generation, because whenever I went to those conferences of Alliance of Civilization, at the beginning, I found one of the target group was younger generation, along with big leaders from all over the world, practicing diplomats and academicians. Politicians, of course, a must. But the main thing, the target was the younger generation, so that they understand and they try to pursue this goal of regular peace. Today, I also want to, point out, with peace, we should also try this alliance, which both the ministers said, with whom it's a great honor to, participate in such a nice, panel, that we should actually open up, because alliance, once upon a time, always was alliance for war. But nowadays, we can have these alliances even to work together to reach out to people at the farthest corner of the world, maybe with COVID vaccine, for fighting climate change, for overcoming poverty. All these things through alliance we can have. And alliance of civilizations, as our first speaker said, it is a plural. Of course, civilization based on culture, civilization based on economic development, civilization based on education can be different. But if we want to maintain peace in this world, as has been pointed out by Bernard Lewis previously, afterward by Samuel Huntington, if we want to avoid, to them, most of the time they're thinking it is not possible, but we have avoided Third World War for more than, you can say, half a century already. So it is not impossible to have at least some sort of peace. And for that, it's a great opportunity for all of us who have survived even this pandemic to work together, to have alliance of different issues, to promote them, work together, and try to bridge the gap of, division of economy, division of religion, division of education, and try to be close to each other so that, countries can survive, which are not so rich, and other countries can also learn from how to cope with the situation without having so much. There is a big thing, the divide, which we talk about, but it is not only economic divide, it is many kinds of divide. This alliance of civilizations can actually overcome that divide. And I'm not talking about the old divide, political divide or religious divide all the time. We can overcome, like we have seen, Honorable Pope coming all the way to Iraq only a few days back and going to one of the topmost Shia leaders of the world. These are all call for peace, and this comes from the inspiration of the followers of all the big leaders, whether political or religious. They all want peace. They don't want destruction of their country. They don't want invasion. So as a career diplomat of more than 35 years, and a promoter, because before also more than 10 years ago, I gave on the same topic, cultural diplomacy. I made a presentation of half an hour on BBC, British Broadcasting Corporation, on the same thing, that this new thing, new dimension of diplomacy, which was always there, but not in the forefront, beside political and economic diplomacy, we should always try to bring forth now this new dimension, which includes even religious diplomacy, that is cultural diplomacy, which the Honorable former Mayor of Athens said again and again, that culture can play a big role in his speech. And I totally agree. If we come to Bangladesh, we have a very big population, more than double than my host country. We have more than 165 million people, and we live peacefully. We have 85% plus of that Muslim, 15% other religions, including Christian. And many of you maybe are not aware, now a Bengali from Bangladesh is even a cardinal in Vatican, because we have millions of Christian even in Bangladesh, not just Buddhist and Hindu. So if people have good wish and goodwill and good leadership, they can easily survive and they can easily live very happily side by side and go forward from an underdeveloped country to a developing country towards being a developed country, which Bangladesh in its first 50 years, starting from 1971, have already achieved this year on 26th February. So these are the things. We're this year enjoying our Golden Jubilee. When we got independence, we had almost very little per capita income, $100 plus. And now our per capita income is $2,000. And how big is the population I've already mentioned. And we are one of the first 5 fastest growing economy in the world. And in several things, we are first in the world or second in the world in peacekeeping, providing peacekeeping force. We are already first. In second in making ready-made garments all of you are wearing in the whole world. So we are proof that if we want this alliance of civilization, pointing out correctly, thanks to the first speaker, who was one of the initiators, towards and directing towards the younger generation, thanks to Kofi Annan for supporting, and thanks to Honorable President Mr. Erdogan, also leading it year after year. And with all these things, we can easily have at least some sort of good, productive peace on earth. So without further ado, I will complete here and go for the question and answer session. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Ambassador Manan, thank you for your very insightful contributions to the panel, your experience in many different countries as ambassador, and your knowledge of the success story of Bangladesh in terms of keeping different civilizations, religions, and cultures together is, of course, very praiseworthy for us to have on this panel. Thank you for your help. Now, I know Miguel has to leave in 10 minutes because he has a very important meeting, which he told us about. But I have 2 different concepts that I would like our speakers to share their views. One is migration, refugees is a huge problem these days. And some countries, including my own, has to deal with keeping millions of refugees and dealing with their needs. Whereas some countries in Europe are refusing to accept even a few hundred refugees to show their solidarity. And I always argue that if we don't really go to the main cause of the problem by taking either 1 million refugees or just 10 refugees, are we really solving anything at any stage? We have to look at why these people feel that they are abandoning their loved ones, their countries, their homes, their towns, because they fear for their lives. Isn't it time to put an end to the dictatorship in Damascus and bring real democracy to Syria? Second question is, 2 days ago, there was a referendum in Switzerland about women's right to wear a veil. And they decided it's illegal to wear a veil. What is the difference between a mask and a veil is another question. But when we are forced to, or all humans, not only ladies, but all humans are forced in a way to cover their faces against the coronavirus, why are we voting to see if they can do the same for religious purposes. Isn't that an oxymoron, a debatable question? So I'll give the speakers a chance to share their views. And of course, feel free to address any other issues that you would like vis-a-vis Iraq, Libya, Syria, that require more alliance of civilizations these days than other parts of the world. Miguel, let's start with you again.
Yes, thank you, Egemen, and thank you to the ambassador of Bangladesh, Masood Manan, and of course, my dear friend Dimitris Abramopoulos. You know, thank you for your very interesting contribution. Before I answer your last question you posed to us, let me comment what our dear friend Dimitris mentioned. I have to comment, if you allow me. First, I think it's a good news. I think he proposed rightly the need to establish a kind of center of cultural and civilization dialogue that also address the migration issue. I have to say that between Spain and Turkey, and with the support of the United Nations Alliance for Civilization, we are working. We are in the last phase to announce very soon the opening of a center in Istanbul that is going to be the mediation center for cultural and religious dimension. That means that in order to address this complexity of conflict and political crisis, sometimes the cultural and religious dimension are not taken into account. And so we have both not only the United Nations Alliance for Civilization, but Turkey, Spain, agreed to create a center in Istanbul. It is going to be in Pera. It's the former premises of the Spanish presence in Istanbul, and now it's as a foundation of Turkey. So we are going to practically open this center during this year. That will be also with the contribution of Secretary of State of Immigration in Spain to address the immigration problem. So that's my first comment on the initiative of Dimitris. And the second, I have to clarify, because there has been a lot of discussion about the word. You know, there was a lot of comment why we call alliance of civilization, why there was criticism about the word alliance, and there was criticism to put an S in civilization. People were, of course, much more aware of the culture of civilization, the culture of the dialogue of culture, the dialogue of religions. But when we create, and I conceptualize myself, because I really have to recognize that I was at the beginning of the conceptualization of this initiative, we want to go a step further. I mean, the dialogue is absolutely condition sine qua non. Without dialogue, you cannot really move forward, but it's not enough. What we want to add is a kind of alliance. And I have to say, it's not a alliance, of course, has been used in the Western world as a negative concept. You ally yourself in order to fight against an enemy, as Dimitri was saying. But in our case, it's not the case. I think we are committed together to make things together, not against anybody, but in favor of everybody. So the alliance is a kind of, let's say, a common responsibility of everybody, not just to have a dialogue. And then after the dialogue, you leave the room and then you continue to perform like always. No. What we want is that the people who participate in this initiative commit themselves to work for clear objective. And the objective you have, Dimitri, you have identified, Ambassador Manan has identified. So you have so many common challenges that we have to be together, allies. Alliance is a beautiful word. It's not a negative one. It's not against somebody. It's only in favor of achieving certain results. So that are my two general comments. On the two issues, on the refugee and immigration, I have a very simple response to you, Egemen. I know that Commissioner Dimitris Avramopoulos know more than all of us about refugees and migration. My modest knowledge is that there is two origins for refugees and migration. One is due to the economic, social context of the people. They want to have a better living, so you have to address the economic, social environment of these people, poverty, hunger, better living. And secondly, when you have a political and conflict crisis, if you have a war and you have persecution, you run from your country. You try to protect your family, yourself. So if we want to have a stop of refugees in Syria, you have to put an end to the Syrian conflict, and you have to engage. And that's what I've been my personal engagement. And I have to say that I'm not so happy how the European Union has been engaging. I think we should be much more engaged. It's our area, it's our vital interest there. So we welcome all the effort, Turkey effort. There are many efforts, international community effort, but I think Europeans have to be much more active. And the second answer, because we don't have time, is about this demonization of Islam, of the way people wear veils, and I think stigmatization is not a way to work. I think in the Western world, we have to really discuss, we have to be more active, we have to explain, we have really to avoid this Islamophobia. We are also combating anti-Semitism and Christianophobia everywhere. And I think the way the Muslim and the women Muslim are being treated because they put a veil is unfair. It's unfair because one thing we can complain about burqa for security reasons, for facial recognition, but another thing is to make a kind of demonization about the veil. I ask myself, is the contradictory in terms about burkini? I mean, in France, there was a big campaign. Women cannot go to the beaches all bare, but we allowed to have on lake beaches, nude beaches. So one time we need allow them to go to be naked, but we don't allow them to put all the dresses to go to the sea. It's a contradictory word. I mean, let the people rule and have liberty and freedom to go to the sea as they want. So that is my position. And thank you very much. I have now to leave all of you. Thank you, Dimitri, for your very enlightening word. I think we have a tremendous challenge. Thank you, Ambassador. And I know that Bangladesh is an active country for the United Nations Alliance of Civilization. We have a very good relationship. And thank you to you, Egemen, and to the organizer to have invited me to participate in this important gathering. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You are best regards to the Secretary General. Thank you for making the time.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Dimitris, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank Miguel for his participation and his very positive remarks. There is an ideological element behind this initiative. As I said at the beginning, it's timely and topical. Now, let me say some words of migration. For 5 years, I was responsible for this very sensitive issue in Europe. And believe me, when I started, I could never imagine that in 5 months' time, security and migration would be the most important issue in the world. Because when I started, things were quite easy. But this uncontrolled flow started, and Europe was taken by surprise. They didn't know how to handle it, and I was asked to build the architecture on migration and security of Europe. So I had to cope with this issue thoroughly. We know what are the root causes of migration. And unfortunately, these causes are still there. The international community did not manage to sort these problems out. Either people who want to escape from persecution, fear, terror, war. But let me go to the core of this issue. Migration and human mobility is inevitable. I would say necessary and in some cases desirable. It is inevitable because the demographics of the world population quadrupled in the 20th century and will continue to grow until about mid-century. More people are on the move than ever before, are connected to the internet. Migration is also necessary if we are going to have the labor skills available and if our economies are to flourish. Finally, migration is highly desirable if we have in place sensible, humane, and responsible policies. Here I think the Alliance again is helping us all to govern migration in a more humane and responsible manner. This is the age of human mobility. That's how it will be qualified by the historians of the future. Migration cannot be stopped and cannot be contained. COVID can be stopped and can be contained, but migration, no. It's a phenomenon brought to life by the dreams and the nightmares of the impoverished and the terrified. Migration historically has been overwhelmingly positive, which is not what you hear today, of course, with the very well-known stereotypes, especially in some countries in Europe. I had to cope with that. It was not easy to coordinate 28 nations with 28 different governments. And some of these governments, I want to make a distinction between governments and states, we are looking inwards. They were thinking of the next elections. And you know, the populist political verb is very nice in the ears of the citizens. That's how things did not work. And finally, migration today is an issue on the top of the priorities of the European Union. And I hope that this new pact will be workable and efficient. By saying so, I would like again, once again, to praise your country, Turkey, for hosting this big number of approximately 4 million refugees. You know that I had cooperated with Turkey in my capacity as a commissioner during the last 5 years. And since the year 2016, when we adopted this very well-known EU-Turkey statement, things were working quite properly, with only one exception last February in the area of the land borders between Greece and Turkey, where the two countries were in a sort of a standoff for something that was also unnecessary at that time. But Turkey has to be praised, and Europe has to continue supporting Turkey in order not only to maintain these people there, these desperate people, but to provide them with food, jobs, medical care. Nowadays, another issue has come up. I don't want to be prophetical, but at the end of this COVID era, I'm afraid millions of people would like to escape from other parts of the world to come to Europe. Why? As Mr. Guterres said the other day, unfortunately, the civilized world is not supporting Africa. Only 2 or 3% of the African citizens have been vaccinated so far. So what's going to happen? They will try to find a safe haven again, and the destination might be Europe. Are we prepared for that? Turkey might be again one of the corridors, as it is the case of Northern African countries. So we need a wider cooperation. By saying so, I come back to Mediterranean. You know, personally, given my experience as Commissioner Foreign Minister, I believe that we must all focus on the future of migration. That's why the initiative undertaken recently to set up a think tank that will keep discussing issues of cooperation with Mediterranean has to be welcomed very positively and enthusiastically by all of us. So, migrants, coming back in order to finish my intervention, migrants embody the essence of multiculturalism, as they are. We all know that. They can become the bridges between countries of origin, transit, and destination. Of course, what I say is linked directly to what's the kind of policy all these countries are adopting. Migrants are the spark that ignites new ideas, new impulses, and new thinking. So when people move, they carry their skills, but they also carry their traditions, their heritage, and their languages. So their traditions, their heritage must also be respected. However, there is a fear factor based on three reasons: the global financial economic downturn, the post 9/11 security syndrome, which is still there, and this is what is fueling Islamophobia and xenophobia in many countries, and most importantly, the fear of loss of personal and national identity. On the top of that, we have COVID. So far, all these reasons exist. I would like to say that we have to express our thanks to the Alliance for helping us to manage the diversity that characterizes today's world. The third consideration is that the Alliance is helping us to dispel destructive and dangerous stereotypes and mythology, if I can use this term, about migrants. Governments have a major responsibility to do this, and the role of the Alliance helps us all to destroy these destructive stereotypes associated with migration. So what we discussed today linked to migration is of great importance. And again, since you are one of the leaders of this forum, which for me is one of the most important ones in Europe, and even in the world, come back to this issue. Come back to this issue by organizing an exclusive event of how can we manage all these problems by promoting cooperation in a spirit of cooperation. By saying so, I would like to say that Greece and Turkey are crossing difficult moments, definitely. It is not a moment to discuss the reasons that we have reached this level. Because in the past, you remember when you were minister, and your colleague, Mr. Davutoglu, remembers that, and your president, we had crossed a period of very peaceful relations, trade exchanges. You remember when we came to Istanbul in the year 2012, we signed 25 agreements. We opened the doors. Me as minister at the time, and later on as commissioner responsible for Schengen zone, I provided the Turkish citizens with the permission to visit Greece without a visa for some days. All these things have stopped. Even the fact that I cannot come today to Istanbul is because the flights are cancelled. Why? We all know how can we fly, by taking all precautions and all these things. I think it has to do with this very negative climate. Our leadership, and we are lucky that we have strong leaderships in both countries. I'm sure they have the strong political will to get rid of the stereotypes of the past. We are neighbors. We have to coexist. We have to understand each other. And instead of promoting rivalries, to promote all these ideas that bring us closer to each other. It's not me and you that says that. It is the deeper will of the citizens of the two countries. I believe that things will change for the better, and we have to be among the ones that will try to achieve this goal. Because yes, we talk about global cultural dialogue, but everything starts from our neighborhood. Dialogue is a Greek word, and you know what does it mean? It leads to consensual results and outcomes. If we are fortified behind the stereotypes of what was inherited to us by the past, we are not going to achieve any practical political result on what we share today as a spirit that dominates in this very important initiative that led us today through this dialogue, through this debate, to raise, to lift to its highest possible level the basic principles upon which the future world has to be built. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nitis. And I accept your challenge to organize another event to discuss these conflicts and to find solutions. We should definitely do it within the Bosphorus Summit because we started organizing online events throughout the year as well. But I would like to go to Ambassador Manan and ask him the same two questions about the two topics that I had raised. And let's hear his opinion regarding how to deal with the Syrian atrocities towards their own citizens and the Switzerland referendum on the bail.
Thank you very much. You know that we have similar challenges very recently developed. Actually, it was developing over the last few decades, but the big number of, Rohingya displaced people crossed the border in 2017, 25th August. They came inside Bangladesh and we welcomed them. And after all, they came from our neighbor. We want to solve the problem through peaceful negotiation, both bilateral and multilateral. And we I take this opportunity to put into record, we thank in a big way how Turkey and its people, its leadership stood beside us during this time of challenge. So, I think it's through negotiation, it's through, multilateral and bilateral efforts. We have to solve all these kinds of problems. But at the same time, since Syrian thing has been lingering for a longer period, so maybe you have to deal in other ways as well. But that depends on, as we discussed, in different culture, there are different practices through which you achieve a goal. But the main thing is when you spoke about migration and refugee side by side, we should say to the world that today's many great countries are born out of migration. So there is no question of migration to stop. But to create refugee crisis, that is not welcome at all, because to let people suffer is not a welcoming thing. That we should try to avoid in a diplomatic way with a humanitarian effort. That's my simple answer, because it has been there for centuries or millennia, but now in this modern time, we should try to overcome all these crises which comes out of refugee problems. But migration, I think, will persist. As I told you, many big countries who boast that they are now the top, they are creation of migration. You and I know that. Without naming, it will not be diplomatic. And the last one about burqa and others. Yesterday was, let me be in a little light note, yesterday was World Women's Day. And I come from a country which is led by women. So when the question comes about wearing or not wearing burqa, I think let the women decide whether it is in Europe or whether it is anywhere in the world, what they want to wear, how they want to show themselves. It should be from themselves. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, I would like to thank all of our panelists for a great meeting. I think the 11th annual Bosphorus Summit has now come to an end, and I now declare it closed. But we had a very successful opening with the participation of President Erdogan, and now we close with such a positive panel. Yes, the world has problems, but there are also visionary leaders who have ideas to solve them. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day. Thank you, Dimitris. Thank you, Ambassador Manan, and thank you to Mr. Moratinos for being a part of this panel.
Your Excellency, may I interrupt here, please?
Yes.
We have a few questions from the floor. Would you like to take them?
Well, we don't really have much time because we're gone, but I'll just take two questions to please you, Ali. Just two questions.
Coming. The first one will be from another ambassador who's been watching you, the ambassador of Algeria. Here is the floor with you.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to contribute to the debate on this very important issue. I have a question. What people generally retain from Mr. Samuel Huntington's ideas is obviously the too much popular concept of the clash of civilizations. What he also said and wrote, as a matter of fact, in his famous book is the following very important observation, and I quote: "In the emerging world of ethnic conflict and civilizational clash, Western belief in the universality of Western culture suffers three problems. It is false, it is immoral, and it is dangerous." This clearly means that today, more than ever before, such things as international cooperation, multilateralism, dialogue of civilizations are becoming issues of paramount importance. So my question is to all panelists, why is it that this vital concept of alliance of civilizations has so far remained nothing more than just wishful thinking? Thank you very much.
Well, it's not only a wishful thinking, it has achieved a lot, but let's get the second question and then answer the two questions together for the sake of time.
Questions on the floor? I guess
If
not, Your
not-
Excellency. Oh, 1 second. Ms. Sevda Aydın would like to ask a question.
Okay.
Merhaba, ben Türkçe konuşacağım. Mümkün mü tercüme?
Hello, I would like to ask my question in Turkish. I hope you hear the translation. First of all, I'm really pleased to follow this session. I'm participating for the first time, and I see that this problem of migration and refugees, the root cause of these problems are not scrutinized enough, or the people who cause migration and refugees do not see themselves responsible for these problems. So here we need to defend the rights of these people, and we need to accept that all of us are responsible for migration, and we should also focus on the countries that are the most responsible for migration. We should be more courageous. We should act in unity, and to reintegrate those people in the society, we need to support them with education. We should allow them go back to their homeland or to any other country where they want to live. So we need to support them on the basis of equal rights, and everyone should play their part here. And logistically, this should not be only the problem of the neighboring countries, because it is not the problem of those countries, so we should face with that.
Thank you.
Very quickly, I would like to say that, first of all, as far as Samuel Huntington's book was very important, definitely. But what did he achieve? First of all, to remind us that there was always a clash of civilizations. And secondly, to wake us up in view of what was going to happen in the world. Since this book was written, a lot of things have happened. Migration, this COVID. So his real message is, you men, if you want to be sure that you will have an auspicious future on this planet, since everything is globalized, start understanding each other. And this common understanding, as I said at the beginning, that leads to mutual cultural respect is the beginning of the end of the era of clash of civilizations. Things are changing. Young people are thinking differently. They are they feel more as citizens of the world than as citizens of their countries. So what's happening? Some political leaders, some political ideologies try to drag them back behind their closed borders. But the world now is open. So yes, what the ambassador said before is true, but we have to see things beyond of what Huntington said at that time. It was a warning signal. Let's hope that we got the message.
Ambassador Manan, would you want to respond?
Very quickly, I agree with what Honorable Minister told. And Excellency, clash of civilization became a part of our life of different civilizations for thousands of years. Alliance of civilization just started less than 20 years ago. It will take time. I told the same thing long time back when somebody was questioning democracy in developing countries. I will not name, it will not be diplomatic. He was a famous politician. I was sitting next to him in London. I was second secretary. I told Excellency, what you got in 700 years, we can't get in 20 years. Correct. So that's the thing. What is persisting for a couple of thousand years, at least, if not couple of 100,000 years, we don't know even that long history of ourselves, I mean Homo sapiens. But if we want to have a peaceful life, as I said before and again, Alliance of Civilization is dedicated for the younger generation who doesn't, as Excellency said very rightfully, believe in borders. They are international citizens. So for the next generation who's sitting in Iceland, thinks he's no less than somebody sitting in one of the greatest country, which doesn't have, so much challenges as Iceland has, maybe from some reasons. So these are the things which has changed a lot after all this digitization and, communication, plus change in thinking, thought process, and also because people now know that what is rightfully his or her. Previously, for lack of communication and lack of different, means of going from one country to another country, many people didn't even know what belongs to him rightfully or her. So that is one question. And another thing, as you said correctly, it is actually once problem is no more one's problem, whether it's a country, whether it's a group of people, whether it's people speaking one language, it is now global, whether we like it or not. So we should all try to share through this kind of efforts, alliances, how to overcome all these challenges, whether it is refugee, whether it is migration, poverty, or COVID-19. On this note, I think I give back the microphone to our moderator.
I agree with both of our panelists. The Alliance of Civilizations has already achieved because it has served as a platform for dialogue. And as Dimitris said, dialogue is very important. Without it, you cannot even start discussing and diagnosing the problem. And we are living in a pandemic era where we have all learned that solidarity and cooperation is more important than ever, because we don't have the luxury to say it's their problem, because a virus smaller than visible by the eye, can only be seen by a microscope, can become a global force that puts down all the global forces down. And as you follow, the permanent members of the Security Council are the most victimized countries of the coronavirus, so they can hardly protect themselves, forget about being the savior of the rest of the world. So it is time for cooperation, it's time for solidarity, and it's time for dialogue. And this panel was a great platform for dialogue. Thanks to all the panels again, and thanks to the organizers of the Bosphorus Conference. And we had a very successful annual meeting this year, although it was hybrid. Hopefully next year we will be living in a safer and healthier world, and we can join together in Istanbul. Yes, Dimitris.
Well, I'm sorry we didn't manage to come to Istanbul to enjoy your legendary hospitality, Egemen. I would prefer, and I believe all panelists are thinking the same, that we prefer to be physically there. So try your best to get rid of COVID as soon as possible and open the doors and the flights. We want to come see you there.
As you know, the inventor of the Pfizer-BioNTech is a Turkish couple. So we are doing our best, but we are also requesting other countries to help us find more and more cures. Hopefully it's time for some kind of medicine, more than a vaccine, but a real medicine to deal with this virus. Hopefully that will come from other scientists, and we will put an end so we can get together and hug each other as we used to do.
Hopefully.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Teşekkür ederim.
Thank you one more time to Mr. Excellency Manan. Thank you, Mr. Excellency, Mr. Bosch, and Mr. Excellency, Mr. Moratinos, and Mr. Excellency, Mr. Avramopoulos.
Teşekkür ederim.
Evharistopoli.
At this time, our summit has ended. And thank you very much for all coming here physically and who joined us virtually also online. So if the COVID situation permits us, we'd like to see you. We hope to see you again at our next summit, our 12th summit, which will take place in December 2021.
Sayın Büyükelçiler, salonda bulunan değerli konuklar.
Distinguished ambassadors, distinguished participants, we have finished our 11th summit, 11th Bosphorus summit. Thank you so much for your participation. I hope, as all of the participants have put forward, all of the panelists have put forward, I hope we shall get rid of this COVID and we shall get together physically on the first week of December. So I thank each and every one of you. Have a good evening. There's a small closing ceremony outside there. We can have some coffee and talk to each other. Thank you.